The mansion was quiet that night, too quiet for a man who had built his life on noise. The rhythmic ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the hallway echoed through the marble corridors, mingling with the soft whisper of rain against the glass walls. Damien Hale sat at the edge of his bed, a man sculpted by discipline and success, but hollowed by something that money couldn't quite fill. He had built Hale Industries from nothing, a billion-dollar empire that stretched from New York to Tokyo. Yet tonight, as the storm rolled in over the city skyline, he found himself listening not to the hum of the markets, but to the faint sound of footsteps coming from down the hall. Light, careful, hesitant. Maria, the new maid, the one who always avoided eye contact, who spoke in whispers, who somehow made silence feel warmer than words ever could. She was the kind of woman who looked like she didn't belong in a house like this. Small frame, tired eyes, but always neat. Always graceful, even when her hands trembled carrying a tray of coffee. But what caught Damien's attention wasn't her shyness. It was the way she never looked at him the way others did. No greed, no admiration, no curiosity. It was as if she were trying to make herself invisible. And in a world where everyone wanted something from him, that felt strange. So that night, when he heard her footsteps stop outside his bedroom door, he decided to find out why. He dimmed the lights, stretched across the bed, and closed his eyes, pretending to sleep. The door creaked open slowly. He kept his breathing steady, faint, controlled, the same control that had made him untouchable in boardrooms and negotiations. She entered silently, carrying a folded blanket. The light from the hallway cast her silhouette on the wall, delicate, almost fragile. She moved to his bedside and stood there for a moment, motionless. He could feel her hesitation like static in the air. Then she sighed, a small, almost inaudible breath that carried more sorrow than words ever could. "I told myself I wouldn't come in," she whispered. Damien's pulse tightened. She gently unfolded the blanket and placed it over him, her movements careful not to disturb him. Her hands lingered near his arm, then quickly withdrew as if the proximity burned her. "You look so tired," she murmured. "You act like you don't feel anything, but I see it. Every night you come home later. Every morning you leave before the sun." Damien felt something inside him shift. He'd heard people talk about him before, in meetings, in gossip columns, in award ceremonies, but never like this. Maria continued softly, "I know I shouldn't say this. You're my boss. You probably wouldn't even remember my name. But you're lonelier than anyone I've ever met." Her voice cracked, and she stepped back, clutching the edge of her apron. He could have stopped then, could have opened his eyes, revealed himself, and asked her why she cared. But something in her tone held him frozen. She walked to the nightstand, picked up a photo frame, his late mother, smiling. "I clean this picture every day," she said quietly. She has kind eyes, like she saw the world and forgave it anyway. She set the frame back down, then turned toward him again. "I don't know why I'm saying this," she whispered. "You'll never hear me. But if you did, I'd tell you to rest. You've already won, Mr. Hale. You don't need to keep fighting everything." A moment passed. Then softly, she reached out again, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Her fingers trembled. Damien's chest tightened. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes full of something he couldn't name. Pity? Kindness? Maybe both. Then she stepped back, her hand slipping into her apron pocket. She pulled out a small folded note. She placed it on his nightstand beside his watch. "For when you wake up," she said under her breath, and turned toward the door. When the door clicked shut, Damien finally opened his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt something other than control. He felt guilt. He sat up slowly, staring at the folded note. The handwriting was neat, careful. "Mr. Hale," it read. "Please forgive me for overstepping. I only wanted to thank you. You didn't know. But when my brother was in the hospital, you paid the bill. You told the HR department to keep it anonymous. I know because they slipped. You saved his life. I've been wanting to say thank you, but I didn't know how. So I just prayed for you every night instead. Please take care of yourself." The words blurred in his vision. Damien set the note down, pressed his hands over his face, and exhaled a shuddering breath. He remembered the case, a young worker's family emergency months ago. He'd signed off on the medical coverage without reading the name, just another act of corporate goodwill, or so he thought. But this was her brother. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The storm outside had softened into a whisper of drizzle, the city lights painting the walls in gold and blue. He'd tested her to see if she had ulterior motives, to see if she'd snoop, steal, or gossip. But instead, she'd come only to make sure he was warm, and that realization hit him harder than any boardroom defeat ever could. The next morning, Damien came down early, earlier than he had in years. Maria was already in the kitchen, her hair tied back, quietly scrubbing dishes. She froze when she saw him. "Good morning, Mr. Hale," she said quickly, lowering her gaze. He studied her. The same uniform, same tired posture, same quiet presence. But now every small thing about her seemed louder. "Good morning," he replied. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, softer. She nodded awkwardly. "Would you like your usual coffee?" He hesitated. "Actually, could we talk for a minute?" Maria's eyes widened slightly. "Of course, sir." "Did I do something wrong?" "No," he said too quickly. "No, nothing like that." He gestured toward the dining table. "Please sit." She blinked, clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, it's not an order," he interrupted gently. "Just a request." After a moment's hesitation, she sat down, hands clasped in her lap. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "I read your note." Her eyes flickered up, then down again. "I shouldn't have written it. I'm sorry. It was inappropriate." "No," he said quietly. "It was the kindest thing anyone's done for me in years." Silence settled between them, filled only by the ticking clock on the wall. "You knew about your brother's medical bill," he said finally. She nodded slowly. "Yes, they told me by accident. I didn't want to make things uncomfortable, so I pretended not to know. But I couldn't forget." Damien's throat felt tight. "You didn't owe me anything, Maria." "I know," she said softly. "But I still wanted to say thank you." He studied her. The sincerity in her tone, the humility in her posture. It was disarming. He'd spent years surrounded by people who measured their words like currency. She was the first person who spoke without calculation. After a pause, he said, "Why did you cover me last night?" Maria froze. "You were awake?" "I was," he admitted. "I wanted to see what you'd do. I thought maybe—" He stopped, realizing how cruel it sounded. "I thought maybe you had an agenda." Her face fell. "An agenda?" "I'm used to people having one," he said quietly. "I wanted to see if you were different." "And now?" she asked softly. He met her gaze. "Now I wish I hadn't doubted you." For a moment, neither spoke. The morning light filtered through the windows, soft and golden, painting her face in warmth. "I don't blame you," she said finally. "People hurt you. You build walls. It's how you survive." Her words stunned him. Simple, but true. He exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of years lift slightly from his chest. "You see too much, Maria," she smiled faintly. "I see what others ignore." Something in that answer stayed with him all day. Over the next few weeks, Damien found himself noticing her more, the way she hummed quietly when cleaning, the way she always double-checked the pantry to make sure the older staff had what they needed, the way she'd pause by the window just to watch the rain. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something quieter, purer, like watching a forgotten part of himself come back to life. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of meetings, he came home to find the lights dimmed and the house strangely calm. On the kitchen counter sat a small covered bowl with a note. "You looked tired." "I made you soup. It's nothing fancy." "Maria." He smiled for the first time in days. Later, he found her in the garden, trimming roses. "You shouldn't do that," he said gently. "You're off the clock." She turned, startled. "Oh, I just couldn't sleep." He stepped closer. "You don't have to keep thanking me." "I'm not," she said simply. You just remind me that people can change, even the ones who forget how to be kind." He looked at her then, really looked, and he realized something. She wasn't shy. She was careful, because life had taught her that kindness often came with a price. But here, in his house, with him, she'd offered it freely anyway. That night, Damien stood by the window again, watching her walk down the path with her umbrella. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. Weeks turned into months. Damien changed, subtly but completely. He smiled more. He took breaks. He started visiting the hospital his company funded. He spoke to his staff by name. Maria never asked for recognition. But one evening, as she was about to leave, he stopped her by the door. "Maria," he said, his tone soft. "I want you to take tomorrow off." She frowned. "Why?" He handed her an envelope. Inside was a scholarship form, a domestic management course she'd once mentioned wanting to take. "I found this in the staff files," he said. "You applied last year but didn't have the fee." "It's paid now." Her eyes filled instantly. "Mr. Hale, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," he said quietly. "And you will. Consider it repayment for teaching me something no one else ever could." "What's that?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "That kindness doesn't need witnesses to be real." She didn't know what to say. Tears welled in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once. "No, thank you." As she left, Damien looked around his home. The same walls, same furniture. Yet everything felt different now. Warmer. He'd pretended to sleep that night to test her heart. But in doing so, he'd woken up to his own. And from that moment on, Damien Hale, the man who once measured his worth in numbers, began to measure it in kindness instead.